I never believed in omens. Not really. I was the kind of kid who rolled my eyes at ghost stories, who scoffed at the idea of fate, who thought dreams were just the mind's way of taking out the trash. But I kept a dream journal anyway. Not because I thought it meant anything, but because my third-grade teacher, Mrs. Hargrove, said it would help with my creative writing. She said, "Write down your dreams, even the weird ones. Especially the weird ones. You never know what your mind is trying to tell you." I thought it was busy work, a way to keep us quiet for 10 minutes every morning. But I did it. I filled that little blue notebook with scribbles and half-remembered images, with monsters and flying and falling and running and waking up in a cold sweat. I never thought it would matter. I never thought it would come back to haunt me. But it did. And now, looking back, I wonder if I should have paid more attention. If I should have seen the warnings for what they were. If I could have changed anything. Or if the future was always coming for me, no matter what I did. The first entry in my dream journal is dated September 8th, 1998. I was 8 years old. The handwriting is shaky, the spelling atrocious, but the words are mine. Last night, I dreamed about a house with no windows. It was raining inside. There was a man in the corner with no face. He was holding a red balloon. I was scared, but I couldn't move. He said, "Don't forget." Then I woke up. I remember that dream. I remember the feeling of dread, the way the faceless man's words echoed in my head all day. I told my mom about it at breakfast, and she laughed. "You've been watching too many scary movies with your brother," she said, ruffling my hair. "It's just a dream, honey." But it didn't feel like just a dream. It felt like a warning. I wrote it down anyway, because Mrs. Hargrove said to. I drew a little picture of the house, the rain, the man with no face. I didn't think about it again for years. The next few entries are typical kid stuff. Flying over the playground. Falling into a pit of snakes. My teeth crumbling in my mouth. Being chased by a giant dog that looked suspiciously like our neighbor's golden retriever, Max. I wrote them all down every morning, even when I didn't want to. Even when the dreams made me feel weird or scared or embarrassed. I wrote them down because I was a good student and because Mrs. Hargrove gave out gold stars for every completed page. But then, in late October, the dreams started to change. They got darker, more vivid, more real. I started waking up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, sheets soaked with sweat. I started seeing things out of the corner of my eye, shadows that moved when they shouldn't, shapes that didn't belong. I told myself it was just my imagination, just the dreams bleeding into my waking life. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. On October 29th, I wrote, I dreamed I was in the school gym. All the lights were off. There was a big crack in the floor, like an earthquake. I could hear someone crying, but I couldn't find them. Then the crying stopped, and I heard someone whisper my name. I woke up and my pillow was wet. I remember that night. I remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind rattle the windows. I remember thinking about the crack in the gym floor, about the voice whispering my name. I remember feeling like I was being watched. The next day, during recess, I told my best friend, Jamie, about the dream. She shrugged. Maybe you're psychic, she said, grinning. Maybe you can see the future. I laughed, but it didn't feel funny. A week later, the school gym flooded. A pipe burst in the wall, and water poured in overnight, soaking the floor, warping the wood, leaving a jagged crack right down the middle. The janitor found it in the morning. The principal called an assembly. They said it would take weeks to fix. I stood in the crowd, staring at the crack, and felt cold all over. I didn't tell anyone about the dream. I didn't want them to think I was weird. But that night, I went back to my journal and read the entry again. I stared at the words, at the date, at the shaky handwriting. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. But I couldn't. After that, I started paying more attention. I started looking for patterns, for connections. I started writing down every detail, no matter how small. I started to wonder if my dreams were trying to tell me something, if they were warnings or prophecies. On November 12th, I dreamed about a fire. I was standing in my backyard, watching the sky turn orange. I could smell smoke, feel the heat on my face. I saw my neighbor's house burning, flames licking at the windows, black smoke pouring out. I heard someone screaming. I woke up gasping for air. 2 days later, there was a fire on our street. Not my neighbor's house, but the one across from it. The fire department came, sirens blaring, lights flashing. No one was hurt, but the house was ruined. I watched from my bedroom window, heart pounding, the smell of smoke drifting through the air. I thought about my dream, about the screaming, about the heat. I wrote it all down in my journal, hands shaking. I started to get scared, not just of the dreams, but of what they meant, of what I might see next. December 3rd, I dreamed about a car crash. I was in the back seat, but I couldn't see who was driving. We were going too fast. There was a sharp turn, and then everything went black. I woke up crying. A week later, my cousin was in a car accident. She was okay, just a broken arm and some bruises, but the car was totaled. My mom said it was a miracle she wasn't hurt worse. I didn't tell her about the dream. I didn't tell anyone that I started to dread going to sleep. I started to dread waking up and writing in the journal. But I couldn't stop. It was like the dreams were a puzzle, and if I could just figure them out, I could stop something bad from happening. Or maybe I could at least understand why it was happening. But the more I wrote, the worse the dreams got. They got stranger, more violent, more confusing. Sometimes I dreamed about things that didn't make sense. Giant clocks melting in the sky, rivers of blood running through the streets, people with animal faces whispering secrets in a language I didn't understand. Sometimes I dreamed about things that felt too real. My parents fighting, my brother getting sick, my dog running away. I wrote it all down, every morning, even when I didn't want to. One night, I dreamed about the faceless man again. He was standing in my bedroom, holding the red balloon. He said, "It's almost time." I woke up screaming. My mom came running in, turned on the light, held me until I stopped shaking. She asked what was wrong, but I couldn't tell her. I didn't have the words. I just kept thinking about the man, about the balloon, about the way he said, "Almost time." I wrote it down in the journal, but it didn't help. After that, I started seeing the faceless man in other dreams. Sometimes he was just a shadow in the background. Sometimes he was right in front of me. Sometimes he spoke. Sometimes he just watched. But he was always there, always holding the red balloon. I started to wonder if I was going crazy, if the dreams were just my brain playing tricks on me. But then things started happening in real life. Things I had dreamed about, things I had written down. Little things, at first. A broken window, a lost dog, a fight at school. But then bigger things. Accidents, fires, people getting hurt. I started to feel responsible. Like maybe, by dreaming about these things, I was making them happen. Like maybe the journal was a curse, not a tool. I tried to stop writing, but I couldn't. It was like the dreams wouldn't let me. One night, I dreamed about my own funeral. I was lying in a coffin, surrounded by people I didn't recognize. The faceless man was there, standing at the foot of the coffin, holding the red balloon. He leaned over and whispered, "Don't forget." I woke up sobbing. I didn't write that one down. I tore the page out of the journal and burned it in the backyard. I watched the paper curl and blacken, the words disappearing in the flames. I thought maybe that would break the spell, but it didn't. The dreams kept coming. The journal kept filling up, and the things I dreamed kept happening. Years went by. I got older. I stopped believing in magic, in omens, in fate. I stopped writing in the dream journal. I put it away in a box in the attic, along with my old toys and school projects and childhood fears. I tried to forget about it. I tried to move on, but the dreams never really stopped. They just changed. They got quieter, subtler, easier to ignore. I told myself they were just dreams, just my mind working through stress and anxiety and the mess of growing up. I told myself they didn't mean anything. But then, last year, I found the journal again. I was cleaning out the attic, getting ready to move into my first apartment. I found the box, dusty and forgotten, buried under a pile of old clothes. I opened it, and there it was, the little blue notebook, the pages yellowed and brittle, the cover faded but still intact. I flipped through it, reading the old entries, the childish handwriting, the drawings of monsters and houses and faceless men. I felt a chill run down my spine. I almost threw it away. I almost burned it again. But something stopped me. Curiosity, maybe. Or fear. Or something else. That night, I dreamed about the faceless man for the first time in years. He was standing in my new apartment, holding the red balloon. He said, "It's time." I woke up in a cold sweat, heart racing, the words echoing in my head. I got out of bed, went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water. I tried to shake it off, tried to convince myself it was just a nightmare, just my mind playing tricks on me. But I couldn't. The next day, I started writing in the journal again that I didn't know what I was hoping for when I picked up the pen. Maybe I thought writing it down would make the fear go away, like it did when I was a kid. Maybe I thought I could make sense of it, or at least put some distance between myself and the dream. But as soon as I started writing, it was like something inside me clicked into place. The words came easily, almost automatically, as if I was just a conduit for something else. I wrote down every detail I could remember. The way the faceless man's suit was always perfectly pressed, the way the red balloon seemed to glow in the dark, the way his voice sounded like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. I wrote until my hand cramped, until the sun started to rise, until I couldn't keep my eyes open any longer. That day, I walked through the world in a daze. Everything felt slightly off, like I was seeing it all through a foggy window. I kept expecting to see the faceless man around every corner, to hear his voice in the hum of the city. I tried to distract myself, work, errands, calls with friends, but nothing helped. The dream clung to me like a shadow. That night, I dreamed again. This time, I was back in my childhood home. The house was empty, silent, except for the sound of rain tapping against the windows. I wandered from room to room, calling out for my parents, my brother, anyone. But no one answered. The house felt wrong, bigger than I remembered, the hallways stretching on forever. I turned a corner, and there he was, the faceless man, standing at the end of the hallway, holding the red balloon. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just watched me, or I guess he would have, if he'd had eyes. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The balloon floated toward me, impossibly slow, until it was right in front of my face. Then he whispered, "You wrote it down. Now it's real." I woke up gasping, clutching the journal to my chest. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I looked down at the page I'd written the night before. The ink was smeared, the words barely legible, but I could still make out the last line. He said it's time. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I sat in my living room, lights on, TV blaring, trying to drown out the memory of the dream. But it stayed with me, gnawing at the edges of my mind. The next morning, I got a call from my mom. She sounded tired, her voice thin and shaky. "I had the strangest dream last night," she said. "I dreamed about the old house. It was raining inside, and there was a man in the corner with a red balloon. I couldn't see his face. He kept saying, 'Don't forget.' Isn't that weird?" I nearly dropped the phone. My mouth went dry. "Yeah," I managed to say. That's really weird." We talked for a few more minutes, but I barely heard her. My mind was racing. How could she have dreamed the same thing? Was it just a coincidence? Or was something else happening? After we hung up, I went back to the journal. I flipped through the pages, looking for patterns, for clues. I started to notice things I hadn't seen before. dates that lined up with real events, symbols that repeated, phrases that echoed across years. The faceless man was always there, always holding the red balloon, always whispering warnings. That night, I dreamed about Jamie, my childhood best friend. We hadn't spoken in years, not since high school. In the dream, she was standing in the middle of a busy street, cars rushing past her in every direction. She looked lost, scared. The faceless man was there too, standing on the sidewalk, watching her. He held out the red balloon, and Jamie reached for it. As soon as she touched it, the world went dark. I woke up shaking. I tried to convince myself it was just a dream, just my mind dredging up old memories. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I found Jamie on social media. Her profile was mostly private, but I could see enough to know she was living in the city, not far from me. I sent her a message, just a simple, "Hey, it's been a while. How are you?" I didn't mention the dream. I didn't want her to think I was crazy. She didn't respond. A week went by. I kept dreaming about Jamie, about the faceless man, about the red balloon. Each dream was more vivid, more urgent. In one, Jamie was trapped in a burning building, the faceless man standing outside, watching. In another, she was lost in a maze of mirrors, her reflection twisting and warping, the red balloon floating just out of reach. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I stopped leaving my apartment. I spent hours poring over the journal, looking for answers, for a way to stop the dreams. Then, one night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I had to. It was Jamie. Her voice was shaky, barely more than a whisper. "I know this sounds crazy," she said, "but I've been having these dreams. About a man with no face. And a red balloon. He keeps saying, 'Don't forget.'" I thought I was going insane. But then I remembered you. You always had those weird dreams when we were kids. Do you know what's happening? I felt a cold wave of relief and terror wash over me. I wasn't alone, but that meant it was real. We met the next day at a coffee shop. Jamie looked tired, her eyes ringed with dark circles. We talked for hours, comparing dreams, piecing together the fragments. The details matched, down to the rain inside the house, the crack in the gym floor, the faceless man's voice. It was like we were sharing the same nightmare that we decided to go back to our old neighborhood, to the house where it all started. Maybe, we thought, if we faced it together, we could break the cycle, or at least understand it. The house was still there, though it looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling, the yard overgrown. We stood on the sidewalk, staring at the windows, neither of us wanting to go inside. Finally, Jamie took a deep breath. "Let's do this," she said as we walked up the steps, the wood creaking under our feet. The door was unlocked. We stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and memories. The rooms were empty, but I could still see the ghosts of our childhood, birthday parties, sleepovers, late-night games of hide and seek. We wandered from room to room, searching for something. I wasn't sure what. In the living room, I found a patch of water on the floor, as if it had just rained inside. Jamie found a scrap of red ribbon under the couch. We looked at each other, fear and understanding passing between us. Then we heard it, a whisper, soft and distant, echoing through the empty house. "Don't forget." We followed the voice to the basement. The stairs groaned under our weight. The air grew colder with each step. At the bottom, we found a door we didn't remember. It was old, the paint chipped and faded, a strange symbol carved into the wood, a circle with a line through it, like a balloon on a string. Jamie reached for the handle, but I stopped her. "Wait," I said. "What if?" But it was too late. She opened the door. Inside, the room was empty except for a single chair in the center. On the chair sat the faceless man, holding the red balloon. He turned toward us, though he had no eyes. "You came back," he said, his voice echoing off the walls. You remembered. Jamie grabbed my hand. I could feel her shaking. What do you want? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. He stood up, the balloon floating above his head. You wrote it down. Now it's real. Now it's yours. I felt a weight settle on my shoulders, heavy and cold. I looked down and saw the journal in my hands, though I didn't remember bringing it with me. The pages fluttered open, the words shifting and changing before my eyes. Jamie stepped forward. We don't want this, she said. We never did. The faceless man tilted his head. But you dreamed it. You wrote it. You made it real. The room started to spin. The walls closed in. I felt myself falling, tumbling through darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was back in my apartment. The journal was on the table in front of me, open to a blank page. My phone buzzed, a message from Jamie. Did that really happen? I didn't know how to answer. I picked up the pen, my hand trembling. I wrote, last night, I dreamed about a house with no windows. It was raining inside. There was a man in the corner with no face. He was holding a red balloon. He said, don't forget. As soon as I finished writing, the phone rang. It was my mom. I had the dream again, she said, her voice shaking. The man with the balloon. He said it's almost time. I stared at the journal, at the words I'd just written. I felt the weight of them, the power. I wondered if I could stop it, if I could change the ending. Or if the future was already written, waiting for me to catch up. That night, I dreamed about the end of the world. The dream was unlike any I'd ever had before. It was vast, endless, and terrifyingly clear. I stood on a hill overlooking a city I didn't recognize, but somehow I knew it was home. The sky was bruised purple, streaked with red and black, and the air was thick with the smell of smoke and something metallic. Below me, the city was empty. No cars, no people, just abandoned buildings and flickering streetlights. In the distance, I could see a river of blood winding through the streets, swallowing everything in its path. I tried to move, to run, but my feet were rooted to the ground. I looked down and saw that the grass beneath me was made of paper, pages torn from my dream journal, each one covered in my handwriting. The words bled together, the ink running like tears. I tried to tear myself free, but the pages wrapped around my ankles, holding me in place. Then I heard it, the sound of a child crying. I turned and saw a little girl standing at the edge of the hill, her face hidden behind a curtain of dark hair. She wore a white dress stained with red, and in her hands, she clutched a balloon. Not red, this time, but black as midnight. She looked up at me, and though I couldn't see her eyes, I felt her gaze like a knife in my chest. Don't forget, she whispered, her voice echoing in the empty city that I tried to speak, to ask her who she was, but my mouth wouldn't open. The words caught in my throat, thick and heavy. The girl let go of the balloon, and it floated up into the bruised sky, growing larger and larger until it blotted out the sun. The world went dark that I woke up screaming, tangled in my sheets, drenched in sweat. My heart hammered in my chest, and for a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. The dream clung to me, sticky and suffocating. I stumbled out of bed, turned on every light in the apartment, and sat on the floor, hugging my knees to my chest. I didn't write the dream down. I couldn't. It felt too big, too real, like writing it would make it true. But the memory of it haunted me all day, lurking in the corners of my mind. I tried to distract myself. Work, errands, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, but nothing helped. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the little girl, the black balloon, the city drowning in blood. That evening, Jamie called. Her voice was raw, frayed at the edges. I had a dream last night, she said. I was on a hill, and there was a little girl with a black balloon. She said, don't forget. I felt a chill run down my spine. Did you see the city? I asked. Yeah, she whispered. It was empty, and there was blood everywhere. We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of the dream pressing down on us. Finally, Jamie spoke. What does it mean? Why is this happening to us? I didn't have an answer. I wanted to tell her it was just a coincidence, just our minds playing tricks on us. But I couldn't. Not anymore. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the journal. The blank page seemed to mock me, daring me to write. I picked up the pen, my hand shaking, and wrote. I dreamed about the end of the world. A city drowning in blood. A little girl with a black balloon. She said, "Don't forget." As soon as I finished, the room grew cold. The lights flickered. I heard a whisper, soft and distant, coming from the hallway. I stood up, heart pounding, and walked to the door. The whisper grew louder, more insistent. "Don't forget. Don't forget. Don't forget." I opened the door and found nothing but darkness. The whisper stopped. I closed the door, locked it, and sat back down at my desk. The journal lay open, the ink still wet. I stared at the words, wondering what I had unleashed. The next morning, the news was filled with stories of disaster. Floods in the Midwest, wildfires in California, a train derailment in the city. I watched the footage, numb, the images blurring together. I thought about the dream, about the city drowning in blood, about the little girl with the black balloon. I called Jamie. "Did you see the news?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. Do you think we did this?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her we weren't responsible, that dreams couldn't change the world. But I wasn't sure anymore that we decided to meet again, this time at my apartment. Jamie arrived looking even more exhausted than before, her eyes haunted. She brought her own dream journal, a battered spiral notebook covered in stickers and doodles. We sat at my kitchen table, comparing entries, looking for answers. The patterns were undeniable. Dates lined up with real events. Symbols repeated, balloons, faceless figures, rain inside houses. The phrase, "Don't forget," appeared over and over in both our journals. "It's like we're writing the future," Jamie said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Or maybe the future is writing us." I replied that we spent hours poring over the journals, trying to find a way to break the cycle. We tried burning a page, tearing one up, even soaking a page in water. But nothing changed. The dreams kept coming, relentless and vivid. That night, we both dreamed of the faceless man. This time, he was standing in a field of paper, the pages fluttering in the wind. He held out the red balloon, and as we reached for it, it turned black in our hands. He whispered, "It's almost time." We woke up at the same moment, both gasping for air, both clutching our journals. We called each other, voices trembling. "We have to do something," Jamie said. "We can't keep living like this." I agreed, but I didn't know what to do. The next day, I went to the library, searching for anything that might explain what was happening. I read about dream interpretation, precognition, shared dreaming, curses, and ancient rituals. Most of it was nonsense, but one book caught my eye, a dusty old volume on folklore and urban legends. It told the story of the dream scribe, a figure who could write the future into being through dreams and words. The legend said that once the scribe began recording their dreams, reality would bend to their will, but at a terrible cost. The scribe would be haunted by visions of disaster, unable to change the outcome, doomed to watch as their nightmares came true. That I closed the book, my hands shaking. It sounded ridiculous, but it also felt true. That I called Jamie and told her what I'd found. She was silent for a long time. "So what do we do?" she finally asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "But maybe if we stop writing, the dreams will stop." We agreed to try. That night, we both locked our journals away, vowing not to write down a single word. But the dreams didn't stop. If anything, they got worse. I dreamed of earthquakes, of buildings collapsing, of people screaming. I dreamed of the faceless man standing in the ruins, holding the black balloon. He whispered, "You can't stop it. You wrote it. It's real. Jamie called me in the middle of the night, sobbing. I can't take it anymore, she cried. It's too much. I see it every time I close my eyes. I tried to comfort her, but I was falling apart myself. I hadn't slept in days. I was jumpy, paranoid, convinced the faceless man was lurking in every shadow. One night, I woke to find the journal open on my desk, though I was sure I'd locked it away. A new entry had appeared, written in handwriting that wasn't mine. It's almost time. Don't forget. I slammed the journal shut, heart racing. I called Jamie, but she didn't answer. I left message after message, my voice growing more desperate with each call. The next morning, I got a text from her. Meet me at the old house. We have to finish this. I drove there, my hands shaking on the wheel. The house looked even more decrepit than before. The windows boarded up, the yard choked with weeds. Jamie was waiting on the porch, her journal clutched to her chest. We went inside, the air thick with dust and dread. We made our way to the basement, to the door with the strange symbol. It was already open. Inside, the faceless man was waiting, the black balloon floating above his head. The little girl stood beside him, her face still hidden. You came back, the man said. You remembered. Jamie stepped forward, her voice steady. We want to end this. We wanted to stop. The faceless man tilted his head. You can't end what you began. You wrote it. It's real. The little girl held out her hand, and Jamie took it. I watched as they both began to fade, their outlines blurring, dissolving into the darkness. I tried to reach for Jamie, but the faceless man blocked my path. He handed me the black balloon. Don't forget, he whispered that I woke up alone in the basement, the journal in my lap. The words, don't forget, scrawled across every page that I sat there for a long time. The journal heavy in my hands. The words, don't forget, echoing in my mind. The basement was cold, the only light a thin beam filtering through a crack in the boarded-up window. I tried to call Jamie, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I texted her, desperate for a reply, but the only response was silence. I forced myself to stand, my legs numb, my head spinning. I climbed the stairs, each step creaking under my weight, and stepped out into the daylight. The world felt different, quieter, emptier, as if something vital had been drained away. I looked back at the house, half expecting to see the faceless man or the little girl watching from the window, but there was nothing. Just shadows and dust that I drove home in a daze. The journal on the passenger seat, my mind replaying the dream over and over. I tried to convince myself it was just a nightmare, that Jamie was fine, that none of it was real. But deep down, I knew better. I could feel the truth pressing in on me, cold and relentless. When I got home, I found a message waiting for me. It was from Jamie's mom. She sounded frantic, her words tumbling over each other. Have you seen Jamie? She's missing. She left her phone and her wallet. Please, if you know anything, call me. I stared at the phone, my hands shaking. I wanted to tell her everything, to explain about the dreams, the journal, the faceless man. But how could I? Who would believe me? I sat at my desk, the journal open in front of me. The pages were covered in writing, but I didn't remember putting any of it there. The words twisted and writhed on the paper, forming shapes and symbols I didn't recognize. I tried to read them, but the letters seemed to shift and blur, slipping out of focus whenever I tried to concentrate. I closed the journal and shoved it into a drawer, locking it away. I told myself I wouldn't open it again, that I would forget about the dreams, about Jamie, about everything. But the dreams didn't stop. If anything, they grew more intense, more vivid, more real. That I dreamed of Jamie, lost in a maze of mirrors, her reflection multiplying endlessly, each one more distorted than the last. I dreamed of the little girl, her face still hidden, her voice a whisper in the darkness. I dreamed of the faceless man, always watching, always waiting, always holding the black balloon. Days passed, then weeks. I stopped going to work. I stopped answering my phone. I stopped leaving the apartment. The world outside faded into a blur of noise and color, meaningless and distant. My only reality was the dreams, the journal, the endless cycle of fear and confusion. One night, I woke to find the journal open on my bed, a new entry written in my own handwriting. It's almost time. Don't forget. I didn't remember writing it. I didn't remember opening the journal. But the words were there, undeniable. I started to see things in the waking world, shadows that moved when they shouldn't, whispers that followed me from room to room, flashes of red and black at the edge of my vision. I tried to ignore them, to convince myself they weren't real, but it was impossible. The line between dream and reality had blurred, and I was trapped somewhere in between. I began to wonder if I was losing my mind, if the journal was some kind of curse, or if I was just unraveling under the weight of my own fear. I thought about burning it, about destroying every page, but something stopped me. A voice in the back of my mind, soft and insistent. Don't forget. I started researching again, desperate for answers. I read about shared dreaming, about tulpas and egregores, about the power of belief and the dangers of obsession. I found stories of people who claimed to have dreamed the future, who said their dreams had come true in ways they couldn't explain. Most of them ended badly. I found a forum dedicated to dream journaling, a small community of people who believed their dreams held power. I posted my story, half expecting to be mocked or ignored, but the responses were immediate and intense. People shared their own experiences, dreams that predicted accidents, illnesses, disasters. Some said they had seen the faceless man, the red balloon, the little girl. Some said they had lost friends, family, even themselves to the dreams. One user, Night Scribe, messaged me privately. "You have to finish the story," they wrote. "It's the only way. If you leave it unfinished, it will keep coming back. You have to give it an ending." I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Was that the answer? Was that what the faceless man wanted? An ending? I opened the journal, my hands trembling. I flipped to the last blank page and picked up my pen. I hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Then I began to write. I dreamed of the end, but I choose a different ending. I choose to remember, but not to be afraid. I choose to let go. As I wrote the words, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The room grew quiet, the shadows receded, the whispers faded. I finished the sentence, closed the journal, and set it aside. That night, I slept without dreaming for the first time in months. When I woke, the world felt different. Lighter, brighter. The fear that had haunted me was gone, replaced by a quiet sense of relief. I checked my phone. No new messages, no missed calls. I thought about Jamie, about the little girl, about the faceless man. I wondered if they were gone too, or if they were just waiting for me to forget that I went for a walk, breathing in the crisp morning air. The city was alive, bustling with people and noise and color. I felt like I was seeing it for the first time, every detail sharp and clear. I smiled at strangers, bought coffee from a street vendor, watched the sunlight dance on the river. For a while, I let myself believe it was over, that I had broken the cycle, that I was free. But that night, as I was getting ready for bed, I found a note slipped under my door. It was written in a child's handwriting, shaky and uneven. "Don't forget." I stared at the note, my heart sinking. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. There was no signature, no explanation. Just those two words that I sat on the edge of my bed, the note in my lap, the journal on the nightstand. I thought about everything that had happened, the dreams, the disasters, the missing people. I thought about Jamie, about the little girl, about the faceless man. I wondered if I would ever be free, or if the story would keep repeating over and over, forever. That I picked up the journal, opened it to the last page, and wrote, "I remember. I won't forget." The next morning, I woke to find the journal gone. The note was gone too. In their place was a single red balloon, floating in the center of the room. I stared at it, my mind racing. Was it a warning? A threat? Or something else? I reached out and touched the balloon. It was cold, almost icy, and as I held it, I felt a surge of memories, every dream, every nightmare, every moment of fear and hope and loss. I let the balloon go, watched it float to the ceiling, and felt a strange sense of peace. Maybe the story wasn't over. Maybe it never would be. But I wasn't afraid anymore. That night, I dreamed of Jamie. She was standing in a field of paper, the pages fluttering in the wind. She smiled at me, her eyes bright and clear. "You did it," she said. "You finished the story." I smiled back, the weight lifting from my shoulders. "I'll never forget," I said. She nodded, and the dream faded into light. The days that followed felt like waking up from a long illness. I moved through the world with a new sense of clarity, as if the fog that had clouded my mind for so long had finally lifted. I went back to work, reconnected with friends, called my mom just to hear her voice. I even visited my old neighborhood, walking past the house where it all began. The windows were still boarded up, the yard still wild, but it no longer felt haunted. It was just a house, nothing more, but the dreams didn't stop. They changed, softened, became less like warnings and more like memories. Sometimes I dreamed of Jamie, her laughter echoing through empty hallways. Sometimes I dreamed of the little girl, her face finally visible, her eyes kind and sad. Sometimes I dreamed of the faceless man, but now he stood at a distance, watching but no longer threatening. The red balloon floated above him, a silent reminder of everything I'd been through. I started keeping a new journal, not for dreams, but for life. I wrote about the things I saw, the people I met, the small joys and sorrows of each day. I wrote about the sunlight on the river, the taste of coffee in the morning, the sound of rain against my window. I wrote about Jamie, about the dreams, about the fear and the hope and the strange, impossible journey I'd taken. I wrote because it helped me remember and because I never wanted to forget. One evening, as I was writing, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Just 2 words, "Thank you." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I wanted to believe it was Jamie, reaching out from wherever she was. I wanted to believe she was safe, that she had found peace. I replied, "Are you okay?" But there was no answer, just silence. That night, I dreamed of the field of paper again. Jamie was there, sitting cross-legged in the grass, the little girl beside her. They were folding the pages into paper cranes, hundreds of them, their wings fluttering in the breeze. The faceless man stood at the edge of the field, watching. He held the red balloon in one hand, a black balloon in the other. He let them both go, and they floated up into the sky, side by side. Jamie looked up at me and smiled. "It's over," she said. "You can rest now." I woke with tears on my cheeks, but they were tears of relief, not fear. I felt lighter, freer, as if a burden I'd carried for years had finally been lifted. I went about my day, the memory of the dream lingering like a gentle touch. I smiled at strangers, held the door for a woman with her arms full of groceries, called my mom just to say I loved her. I felt connected to the world in a way I never had before, as if the dreams had opened a door inside me, letting in light and warmth and possibility. But even as I embraced this new sense of peace, I couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't truly over. There were still questions I couldn't answer, mysteries I couldn't solve. What was the faceless man? Why had the dream started in the first place? Was I really free, or was I just living in a lull between storms? One afternoon, as I was walking home from work, I passed a little girl playing on the sidewalk. She wore a white dress and held a red balloon. She looked up at me and smiled, her eyes bright and knowing. "Don't forget," she said, her voice soft and clear that I stopped, my heart skipping a beat. "What did you say?" She giggled, the sound light as air. "Don't forget to smile," she said, and skipped away, the balloon bobbing behind her. I watched her go, a strange mix of fear and hope swirling in my chest. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe it was a sign. Either way, I smiled, just as she'd told me. That night, I sat at my desk, the new journal open in front of me. I wrote about the little girl, about the balloon, about the way her words had made me feel. I wrote about the dreams, about Jamie, about the faceless man. I wrote about the fear and the hope and the endless, beautiful mystery of life that as I wrote, I realized that the dreams had never really been about the future. They were about memory, about connection, about the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the world. They were about the power of words, the way they can shape reality, for better or worse. That I thought about Mrs. Hargrove, my third-grade teacher, and her advice to write down my dreams. I wondered if she'd known what she was setting in motion, or if she'd just wanted to help a shy, anxious kid find his voice. Either way, I was grateful. I closed the journal, feeling a sense of completion. I didn't know what the future held, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I knew that whatever came, I could face it. I had survived the dreams, the nightmares, the faceless man. I had found my way back to myself. As I turned off the light and climbed into bed, I glanced at the ceiling. The red balloon was gone, but I could still feel its presence, a gentle reminder floating just out of sight that I closed my eyes and let sleep take me. Unafraid, I in the dream, I was standing in a field of paper cranes, the sky above me clear and blue. Jamie stood beside me, her hand in mine. The little girl ran through the grass, laughing, her white dress billowing behind her. The faceless man watched from a distance, his face still hidden, but his posture relaxed, almost peaceful. We stood together, watching the cranes take flight, their wings catching the sunlight. I felt a sense of joy, of freedom, of endless possibility. As the dream faded, I heard a voice, soft, familiar, loving. "Don't forget," it said. "You're not alone." I woke with a smile, the words echoing in my heart. The days passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. I found myself looking forward to the small things, morning sunlight streaming through my window, the smell of fresh coffee, the laughter of children playing in the park below my apartment. I kept writing, filling page after page in my new journal, not with nightmares, but with moments of gratitude, of wonder, of simple, everyday magic. Sometimes I would catch a glimpse of red in a crowd, or hear a child's laughter that sounded just a little too familiar, and my heart would skip a beat. But the fear was gone, replaced by a quiet understanding. The dreams had changed me, shaped me, taught me to pay attention to the world around me, to the people I loved, to the stories that connected us all. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, I sat on my balcony with my journal in my lap. I thought about everything that had happened, the dreams, the warnings, the losses, the moments of terror and hope. I thought about Jamie, about the little girl, about the faceless man. I wondered where they were now, if they were at peace, if they remembered me as I remembered them. That I opened my journal and wrote, "I am grateful for the dreams, for the lessons, for the chance to remember. I am grateful for the people I've loved and lost, for the stories that have shaped me, for the future that is still unwritten." As I finished the sentence, a gentle breeze stirred the pages, and for a moment, I thought I heard a whisper, soft, distant, but unmistakable, "Don't forget." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. I closed the journal and leaned back, watching the first stars appear in the evening sky. I knew the story wasn't really over. Stories never truly end. They just change, evolve, become part of something larger. I was no longer afraid of what the future might hold. I knew that whatever came, I would face it with open eyes and an open heart. That night, I dreamed one last time. In the dream, I was a child again, standing in my old bedroom, the blue dream journal clutched in my hands. The room was filled with light, soft and golden, and I felt safe, protected. The faceless man stood in the corner, but now his presence was gentle, almost fatherly. The little girl sat on the bed, swinging her legs, her eyes bright with curiosity. Jamie was there too, her laughter filling the room, her smile radiant. We sat together, sharing stories, folding paper cranes, letting them fly around the room. The faceless man watched, his head tilted, as if listening to a song only he could hear. As the dream faded, the little girl pressed a red balloon into my hand. "For when you need to remember," she said, her voice clear and kind. I woke with the sunrise, the memory of the dream lingering like a promise. I looked around my room, half expecting to see the balloon floating in the corner, but there was nothing there, just the soft light of morning, the quiet hum of the city, the steady beat of my own heart. I got up, made coffee, and sat down to write. I wrote about the dream, about the feeling of peace, about the sense that I was exactly where I was meant to be. I wrote about the future, about hope, about the endless possibilities that lay ahead. And as I wrote, I knew that I would never forget. Not the dreams, not the people I'd loved, not the lessons I'd learned. I would carry them with me, always, woven into the fabric of my life, guiding me forward. Because sometimes, the things that haunt us are the very things that make us who we are. Sometimes, the future is written in the dreams of a child, waiting for us to remember, to understand, to choose our own ending. And sometimes, the most horrifying thing isn't what the future holds, but the thought of forgetting where we came from, who we are, and the stories that brought us here. I keep writing. I keep remembering. I keep living. And I never, ever forget.